Just so excited. Thank you everyone for joining us and watching Black Feminists with us. Welcome to Black Bold and Brilliant's movie night. Black Bold and Brilliant is a show where movies meet community connection through Black media and awesome conversations. I'm your co-host, Frankie Bains.
And I'm Asia Washington. Again, thank you so much for being here, tuning into Black Feminists, produced and directed by Zaina Theoris. We're just so excited to be here with you tonight and have a wonderful conversation. We have some great guests with us tonight. And we have some more events coming up after this. So Frankie, you want to tell them about that?
Yeah, definitely. So Black Bold and Brilliant is a collaboration between a project called Utah Conversations, the Utah Film Center, and KRCL. And we're bringing you awesome content this year. We've got 5 more events coming up, and our next one is May 26th. It's in collaboration with the Juneteenth. The theme is Black Joy, and we just cannot wait for that conversation. But today, we've got a great panel, a great conversation. And I'll have Asia start us off with introductions.
Yes, tonight we have Shale McNeil. Her pronouns are she, her, and hers. She is the founder and executive director of the Moore Foundation. Shar stands firmly on a foundation rooted in the pursuit of education and social justice advocacy. Her passion for continuing Grandma Moore's dedication to education by any means necessary is rooted in an enduring desire to help those marginalized, disenfranchised, and underrepresented communities to achieve success on their own terms and evidenced by her own path. Shah has an associate's from Bergen Community College in New Jersey, a bachelor's degree from Dickinson University, and a master's from Teachers College at Columbia University. Shah is also a sister of Beta Kappa Sigma Black and Latina Sorority Incorporated. Welcome, Shah. Thank you so much for being here.
Mm-hmm. And we also have Maryan Shale. Maryan is a 3rd-year University of Utah student studying health, society, and policy with 2 minors in sociology and leadership. Maryan was born in Nairobi, Kenya. She is a 1st-generation college student who loves to advocate for underrepresented communities. She comes from a single-parent home where culture, education, and family are embraced. Maryan is the current Black Student Union president and the VP of Student Relations at the U. She loves her Blackness and hearing about others' experiences in higher education. Welcome, Maryan. We're glad to have you. Okay, so we're about to start the conversation. We're super excited. We just want to give the guideline that we're going to invite you all to put your questions into the chat. We'll guide our conversation based on some questions that we have, based on audience questions. And yeah, let's get started on the conversation.
All right, so everyone has seen the film now, and there's a lot of topics. There's different chapters in the film, talk about different things. I kind of want to just start off where the film left off. We kind of talked about Black men and how they view Black feminism, Black feminists. And so that rift between Black women and Black men and like liberation, I think one of the sisters in the film called it trickle down liberation, like Reaganomics. Start at the top and maybe the wealth will come down. Start at the top and maybe the liberation will trickle down to the rest of us. How does Black feminism address these issues such as gender roles, safety inside and outside the community, and toxic masculinity? And we can start with either one of you. How about you, Shah?
Yeah, so the way that feminism shows up in like gender roles and stuff, just making sure that I'm with the question rule. Yeah, it's something that's deeply ingrained into our society, down to things that are taught in the home, not only to be like vindictive or wrong or anything like that, but hey, how do you, when we look at who gets to go outside after a certain time at night, or who has to come home at a certain time, it like depends on the gender of the child and the experiences of the parent beforehand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it shows up all the way from, again, the household. Then when you go to school, looking at well, and I know there's a couple of schools in Florida where girls can't wear like spaghetti strap shirts because distracting to the other people in the classroom and it's hindering learning. But the only folks that they're worried about it distracting is the men in the classroom or the boys in the classroom, right? So it's something that is very systematic and ingrained into our every day, where we almost feel like it is normal. So looking at how do we work on dismantling not only like systematically, but like in our brains. Like, how are we perpetuating this on a regular basis? How are we talking to our kids? How are we doing that? And like weeding out the toxic masculinity that we accidentally adhere to.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I definitely agree with everything Shaw said, like, especially when she brought up like the whole who can go out at night or who, can do this and that. I'm still, pretty young, I mean, I could say I'm an adult, but, I definitely do have like parental supervision to places I go. But this is even like a cultural issue as well, regardless. It's really, I mean, it definitely is, it's just so many things that like intertwine. But I would just say like one thing that we can definitely like focus on is just making sure that when people are speaking up about certain issues, that we're really like, listening to them. And like when women or like even like Black women are, standing up for a cause, it's because there's, a lot of like deep rooted issues in that. And like, just definitely like not giving people like the we hear you, we see you answer, or the Band-Aid answer, but just definitely trying to find ways to do that, because who wouldn't want to like, even if like you go out certain like, at a certain time, like it affects those around you, but it affects the person who's like being stopped from doing these things, or a person who is always being limited because we have to like make everybody else feel better. So yeah,
it seems to be like, even when we talk about things like sexual assault against Black women by Black men, that's always like a touchy subject. We don't want to send another Black man to jail, but we don't really have these conversations about like what happens in our community, in our households. It's just something that we kind of sweep under the rug. So like you all were saying, kind of like actually having those conversations and deprogramming ourselves from doing these things can be really important. Yeah. And so, there's some more stuff in the film that we'd like to touch on.
So the next question we want to ask you all touches on the beef between white women and Black women, and also feminism versus womanism. Most mainstream feminist dialogue centers on white women to this day, the Women's March celebrating Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. So how do Black feminists continue to uplift and center ourselves in this movement that desperately needs our voices? And what role do you think white women have to play in this movement?
I could go ahead and start again. So I think that like what I was just deciding how honest I was about to be. But I think what like is harmful about what's happening is that there are women out there that feel, which I'm like talking about white women, and not all, of course, but some that feel that our struggles are different, and refuse to acknowledge the harm that they themselves might have caused, or the racism part that plays into it, of like, how am I for all women, but also I don't like Black people, and that first they have to confront that notion. It's kind of like when you go to AA or like doing any kind of addiction stuff, like first step is admitting where you are, and then finding and taking diligent steps to be better and become better. There's one book by Charlen that that I love. It's called Unapologetic, a Black Queer Feminist Mandate for Radical Movements. And I like, when I started like looking at what is Black feminism versus what is feminism and what's queer feminism and stuff like that, reading this book helped me get a better understanding and grasp, because one, she puts it on a very simple level, but also she gives actionable items and steps to be able to be better in doing this. And it's for, even though it's geared towards Black queer feminists and women, it is for everyone to read, in a sense of to understand the point of view of where we're trying to come from, right? And it talks about what role do white women have to play in this movement, which is, again, admitting where you are and diligently taking steps to be better. But there's a saying that my mom and I like have been talking about a lot, is like, what are you doing in your household to make sure your child doesn't kill mine? Right? Like, what are you doing on a regular basis to, much like what I was saying with the last question, decolonizing your household to make sure that you are bringing up human beings that won't be racist, right? That won't decide just because you see a Black man jogging, you're gonna follow them and shoot them in the back, right? That you're just creating good humans. And if you don't do that, you will always be fighting against the system. If you don't, our system, right? If you don't take it upon yourself to change your friend group, to correct your family, to tell your racist grandpa, hey, that's racist and you can't say that. And be willing to stand up for what's right, even if your voice shakes, right? And and believing in that wholeheartedly and choosing the road less traveled.
Yeah, and I would say, to answer that question, like, how do Black feminists continue to uplift and center ourselves? I think what we definitely do is lead. I think us Black women are always like, great at leading by example. And when we are like, those women that are in the spotlight, we definitely come from like a background where like, we can bring like more like adversity, but it's also more just so like we are always fighting for the common good of everybody. We understand that if everybody at the table gets a seat, or everybody at the table gets their say, that we can all be on the same page, whether or not like you're leading in your own household, leading in a school setting, or leading in a work setting. Every time a Black woman even like decides to lead or take the initiative, it really says a lot about everything that she's doing, and like those that are looking up to her, those that want to bring her down. Regardless, Black women are like, even Black men are scared of Black women, because once we get up, whether or not we look angry to them, like once we're up there, we're very intimidating, because we're gonna say something because we've held it in for so long, or because we're always being told we can't do this or we can't do that. So, and like the role that white women like play in this movement, to step back, like let everybody have their say. It's just simple as stepping up, stepping down, and knowing how to read the room. Like, don't speak on a Black person's experience when you have 4 Black women right next to you that are like ready to be up there and fight with you. So I think that's like the best way that we can definitely tackle this issue.
I love it. Y'all are amazing. I'm really enjoying this conversation. So Maryan, you brought up, Black women leading movements. That brings up, the Black Lives Matter movement was created by 3 Black women. I believe all of them are queer. I can't remember, but created by 3 Black women, but you know, the stories of police brutality and like injustice against Black people still mainly centers Black men. You know, with the death of like Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, we have seen some shift in public outcry for Black women, but it's still not on the same level as you know, Black men receive. And so how can we shift this narrative to fight for liberation for all Black people at the same time? And this includes queer people, trans people. We tend to leave people out. So how can we change this narrative to fight for all Black people at the same time?
Maybe I can try and tackle this first, and then maybe if Shale wants to come in. That's a loaded question. But I think like the first thing that came to mind for me was like understanding that Blackness is not a monolith. And like that goes from like, you know, like what you wear to how you look, who you surround yourself with, you know, where you're from, etc. So I think like once you're able to educate yourself on like the different types of Black people and, you know, like who like, you know, you're around or like where your surroundings and everything, and then kind of taking it a step further and like, okay, within, you know, my Black community, who is like, you know, the least advantaged or who isn't being represented, and kind of just following this little like trail of like, who's not being included in conversations or who's always being left out. Like even, you know, though like we're talking about, you know, like Black men that are like, you know, being killed or people that are being killed, you know, in like, you know, our daylight, like in like, you know, how can I even say this? Like that are being killed, like, you know, in the world. There's also Black men that are being killed in like, you know, in jails, like, you know, in prison. So there's people that we're seeing that are being killed in and out of daylight. So it's just kind of like, once you start to educate yourself on who's missing and who's not at the table within your own community or like within your own skin color, then I think you can definitely start shifting that narrative because, you know, we know that everybody's dying. It's not everybody's dying, but we know that all like, you know, Black people are dying, regardless if you're queer, you know, if you're a woman, if you're Black. But, you know, every time, you know, you see like those fists come up, you know, it's usually, you know, linked to like a Black man being shot or something like that. And I just think that we have a lot of work to do, but it's going to be a collective action, and it's going to start with, you know, people taking it upon themselves first and then spreading the word.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the things that more like the reason for it, and again, acknowledging how that shows up, is we have to look at Black culture in the sense of we do, it is misogynistic in ways. And when you, not that the loss of a woman is not the same level as a loss of a man, but it's definitely viewed that, it's definitely treated that way. And understanding the history of how we see Black men or how society sees Black men versus seeing Black women, it gets really, like, as Maryan said, it's a loaded question because it's very complicated. And it's like, on one hand, if I was to, there are some things that I can say that would make it sound like I'm against Black men, right? But that's not the case, of course. Like, that's never, like, it's about liberation for all, and to put down one does not do that, right? But acknowledging that society just sometimes values men more than women, regardless of race, creed, or color, right? And so because of that, we get different reactions. And I think in order to, and in the realm of queerness, then you have like Christianity and other religions that are against homosexuality and trans folk and stuff in such a heavy way that they don't care, right? So it's like, not that as a human being they don't care, but like religiously, if you defend the fact that these people are being killed, are you then like now a part of that community? Are you now supporting that community? Like, it's such a thin line that folks have to teeter along of being still accepted into the social circles that they currently have, while also speaking up for what they believe is right. And like, what is it better to be ostracized and not say anything. But still, like, I'm for Black Lives Matter, and I'm only going to talk about this group, and I'm not going to talk about this group, because if I do talk about this group, what people might think of me, I might not be at a place where I can accept that. And it's really about looking at what, like, and staying on the religion aspect, religion is so old and things are so ingrained that it's an unlearning process, that, like, whether you agree with, as a bisexual woman, right, whether you agree with what I do is not any of our business or fault. The fact that I don't deserve to die for what I do is what's important. And, like, that's it. Like, I don't care if you think I'm right, like, or whatever. I just don't deserve to be killed for it if I'm holding a woman's hand, right? So, but if for some folks, and in how orthodox or not orthodox you are in your practices, even saying that I don't deserve to die can be a hell sentence for folks. And recognizing that that is, like, a real thing that they have to battle. Now, doesn't make it right, not really, but it's when in this fight, and Maryan, you said it before, like, we always stick up for everybody, right? But and I think we are the most understanding creatures on the face of the earth, where we do try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and in doing that, it is sometimes to our detriment. But I think that it's also so ingrained because we gave birth to everyone. Black women are the cradle of civilization, you know? How can we not care about our children, even if they're mad at us or don't like us, right? So looking at where the history of where their hesitation and stuff like that comes from is, again, just really an unlearning, sit down, civil conversations, not up and bashing, not up and yelling at one another, not like, you don't believe in this, so you're a terrible person. Nobody's going to hear you after that. Nobody wants to feel like a terrible person. But if you sit down and have a civilized conversation with someone where you're like, so tell me your ideals about that. Like, why do you think that? Why do you feel this way? And allow for them to break it down and keep talking. And then it's like, without demonizing another person, I think more of those conversations. Now, who has those conversations? It's a different story because we are tired, but it is a conversation that needs to be had.
Thank you. It absolutely is. And we need to get into the nuance and the nitty gritty, get to listening to each other and lifting up that Black is not a monolith. I love all that you all both said. We have an audience member. We have Lena. Lena asked this question right here. Do you have to be a Black woman to be a Black feminist?
No. Are we gonna give a longer answer?
No, you do not. Just like feminism, there's men that consider themselves feminists. Like, you do not have to be Black to be a Black feminist.
Yeah. Do you guys want to expound a little bit?
I mean, I could just say from experience wise, I wasn't even like aware of this whole like feminist thing, or like that there was like even like such a thing until like, you know, I started hearing about the other words like misogyny and like all. I'm like, oh, okay. And like as you get older, you know, you start to like educate yourself a little bit, or like you're in those spaces where you're like, ow, like he didn't let me speak, like I feel some type of way, or like once like those little experiences have like these long like, you know, words next to them, you're like, oh, so that's what it is, or like this is what he's doing. That's when I started to like realize, okay, like I'm a feminist, but I'm not like so to the point, like I'm not like on this scale or that. It's just more like when my like, you know, identities are like being attacked, or like, you know, when something I really value is like, you know, being, you know, brought up, that's when I'm like really like, okay, I'm going to war for this. But I mean, I'm probably like a pick and choose type of feminist, you would say, because, you know, if you come in for like my religion, or if you're coming from like something I value, then it's like you're really going to see that feminist side come out. So I mean, that's definitely where like intersectionality comes into play, but it's more so like, you know, I'm like just on this like really, it's a big spectrum, honestly. So you don't have to be a feminist to be like, you know, anything, or like, or vice versa.
I think in addition to that, it's the way that you help support Black women is how you be a Black feminist, right? And whether you're Black or otherwise, if you're sitting in a meeting and you notice that your Black colleague is constantly being cut off and you feel some type of way about them constantly being cut off and you don't say anything, you're part of the problem, right? Your silence is part of the problem. But with stopping and saying like, hey, Maryan unmuted like 4 times. Yeah. Can we, and I, Zoom culture, right? But Maryan unmuted like 4 times. Can we let her talk, right? Or when we get to in-person meetings again, if you notice that someone is about like, we always take that breath before and then it shuts down and and everything like that. You can say like, hey, were you about to say something? Like, can we make space for this person? It's about stopping, honestly, the patriarchy from continuing to overtake, right? Disrupt that. And then in return, when it's your turn and you need that help and someone notices, like it will be culture changing if everybody starts to do that kind of work.
Absolutely. It says that culture and that tone that we're not here to tolerate any of it, but Black feminism is an active way of looking at our issues and lifting up our issues because they're different than white women's issues.
Absolutely. We have a little bit of time left. If anyone in the audience has any more questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. But I wanted to touch on some of the things that the film talks about. I mean, the film went through the history of Black feminism, like early pioneers of feminism, Ida B. Wells and such. But what do you think is the future of the Black feminist movement? Like, what do you hope Black feminists can accomplish in the future?
I'm gonna give this short answer. I would say I want them to accomplish like more recognition for the work they're doing instead of being painted as this like angry Black woman or like these group of Black women who always like have something to nag about or always have something to say. Definitely more recognition for the work that they're doing, because we all know like when you trace the history of everything that like started from the United States or any movement that has ever like started, it's because there was some sort of injustice from a non-POC person to a POC person. I'll just put it that way. So definitely just more recognition and appreciation from like all races, all creed, all color, whoever you are, just like appreciating, the work that, that Black women are doing and like all women are doing, because this type of work, on top of like, the other type of things we got going on, like, like being a Black feminist, like during this time, like in a pandemic and like, all these like racial injustices going on like with our Asian American community and Asian community or like our Black community or whoever like is being, like having issues or like, having, things going against them. Like, we're also like feeling this calling to go help them, because that's what we do. We always like, want to stand in solidarity, like, be, there for everybody. But it's just like, just some little recognition, appreciation will go a long way.
Yeah, like have our back too, a reciprocal relationship. So, Sha.
I hope that in the future we can find rest is what I would love. I would love to walk into a meeting and not feel like, get ready. All right. Okay. Like, I don't want to have to like shadow box before I walk into a meeting because I know someone is going to say something, right? I want to be able to have the hope that I used to, that like, nothing's going to happen. Right. Remember that? Maybe you don't remember that feeling because it was a while ago of, not feeling like I'm going to walk into something and experience something potentially traumatic. I do not know what's happening in my neighbors upstairs, but goodness. But anyway, so looking at like, what does that look like for us? I just want to have a level of rest. And I think that if what Maryan said happens, the recognition, the notoriety, and more than just an award for 5 people once a year where the same 5 people are being recognized, but genuine all around recognizing what the hard work that Black women are doing. I think that if we have that part, that people might start to be like, you know what, let me take this off her plate. She's done a lot. We've paid our debt to society if we had one, right? So like, we've done all this work. So hopefully people will start to see everything that we get to put in and start to take it off of our plate so that we can rest more. I don't see Black women taking as much vacation time from a work point of view, right? Taking as much vacation time as others, because we know if we leave, what if that meeting, they need somebody to speak up in that meeting and I'm the only person that's going to do it? I can't leave. I can't leave my students. From my previous position, one of the reasons why it was so hard for me to go, even though it was time for me to go, was that I didn't want to leave my kids, my nieces and nephews. I didn't want to leave y'all. So like, because that, love you too. Because of that, I didn't, like, it was really hard because it was like, who's going to take care of them if I leave? If my colleagues that also are very involved in students' lives, if we leave, what happens to them? Because we don't trust the system. But if we can get a system that takes care of us and our students and our colleagues and everyone around us, we won't have to do as much work trying to do damage control.
Yeah, because, you know, when you're talking about rest, I'm like, it takes a toll on us, like mentally, physically, spiritually, to always be in that space where we feel like we need to have our guard up and whatnot. It's just not healthy for us. And so basically getting rid of that strong Black woman trope, it could save our lives in a real way. And so, yeah, that's going to be really important for the future.
I'm just letting all of these nuggets of wisdom just sink absolutely in. I think, especially living in Utah, this is one of the first places where I've come into on the regular, I come into the space tense because I know something's coming my way. I mean, from the moment I landed in Utah and came here for new work and new experience 2 years ago, it's been just one of the first places where I've experienced just so many microaggressions. So just to imagine a world where we don't have to come up tense, boxing gloves on, because we know something's going to happen. Awesome. So we got our last question from the audience, and it's appropriate. It's just an extension of this envisioning of just what it will be like for us to have a safe space. So what gives you the most hope as a Black feminist?
I'll go first really quick. Yeah. My hope, what gives me hope is wonderful folks like Maryan. That is the next generation. Yeah, I'm shouting you out, sis. Mm-hmm. That is the next generation of doing this work that we are, as like Black women, when we see all the young girls that are doing amazing work, from like little kids doing amazing work and speaking out, and especially Gen Z with everything that's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements that are happening around the world. I'm not that much older, like I'm not, but it gives me hope that there's like a tag team system of like, you have class, I got you. I could take off work, right? And then we do the switch of like, you have that energy, I might not have that energy, and all of a sudden, like we have this ability, because we're so close in age, and the folks that are doing the movements is like, the millennials and Gen Z the most, we're close enough in age that we can, even if we don't agree on everything, we can still closely work together. And like some of these students that I've seen at the University of Utah specifically, shout out to everyone in the BSU and the social justice advocates and everyone that I had the pleasure of working with while I was there, because they are the future and the future is looking so bright with them.
Absolutely.
Oh, that was cute. That was real cute. You know, I miss you, boo. But literally, like, I was just gonna say, like, my peers, like, I was just about to pass it back down, because they are like, it's more than just my peers. Honestly, like, you know, my fellow students that I see every day, like, you know, those of us in Black Student Union, it's really just like this whole entire like generation, or just like, you know, people just like on social media who are actually educating themselves and like watching these clips of like, you know, like what's going on, and like that are actually, I don't know, it's just so like crazy to see that, like, you know, like it's just more than like, you know, Black students and POC students that are like, you know, going out of their way to like, you know, really, you know, talk about these issues. Like you have like, you know, 19-year-old like white girls, or, you know, all these like, you know, allies, I would say, that are like, hey, like, you know, let her speak, or hey, let her do this or let her do that, and like that actually want to have like, you know, inclusive classrooms, that want to have like, you know, these inclusive, you know, conversations, and, you know, all these things. So I like Shaw said, I'm really excited for the future, because we're getting rid of all that like old thinking that comes with, you know, like the older generation. I'm not going to pinpoint whatever generation it is, but it's just, you know, I think technology is really like what I'm really trying to get at, because everything is literally so accessible, like in one little platform, that, you know, you're going to be able to learn about racism, how to stop it, what to do, you know, who to go to, why you should do this and why you should do that. So if you have like a whole library at your hands, or, you know, you're able to just sit down and like speak to an elder or anything, that's what gives me hope, to be honest.
Yes, we do. We have access to this information. I feel like we're just accountable in a way that we haven't been in a long time. And so,
yeah, and this gives me hope that we can have these conversations on a public forum about Black people and Black feminism in Utah. And be able to be honest and candid with it. So we are out of time for tonight's Q&A, but I want to thank the both of you, Shaw and Maryan. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I loved this discussion tonight. So glad we got to do this with the both of you. Hopefully we could do this again sometime. Yeah.
absolutely. We want to thank you all as our panel. We want to thank KRCL, Radioactive, the Film Center. We want to thank all the viewers for joining. We want to shout out Josh, who's in the back making the tech work. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And yeah, we're just so grateful for everyone who's helping make this programming happen.
Yes, if you have not seen previous episodes of Black, Bold, and Brilliant, you can find the episodes on the Film Center's website. Please go back and watch what we do. We have 5 more events coming up this year. Next one is going to be about Black Joy. It will be a part of the Juneteenth celebration, and so you can catch that on May 26th. And then, so before you leave, in the chat, if you could share your favorite takeaway from tonight's conversation, we'd love to see what you all liked about what we did tonight. Thank you again. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.